So my talk's quite specific, I guess. I'm a bit enthusiastic about Bezier curves. And you've all used them, I'm sure, and the time's pretty limited, so I'm not going to spend any time really talking about where they come from, except they involve a guy called Pierre, Frenchman, and before they existed, you could do something similar, but it involved bendy pieces of wood, nails, and/or lead weights. Nowadays, it involves overpriced Adobe software. So we'll call it a push. Actually, that's not quite true. We can do a lot on the web now with Canvas and JavaScript. So I'm just going to take you through some of the properties of Bezier curves, and then after that, I'll show you some examples of how we can use them. So Bezier curves have a start and an end point. So I hope everyone's with me on this. And then they also have two other points called control points, which define the curve that goes between the start and the end point. So I can move these start and end points and modify the curve. The interesting thing to note is that they start heading towards the control point, and they finish going from the control point to that end point there. That's important, and I guess that's why Pierre was particularly interested in them as a car designer, because if we have two straight lines, for example, we can join them together quite smoothly with Bezier points, as long as we keep the control points in line with those straight lines. So they're quite nice in that sense. And they only take four points to define these quite natural, smooth curves. We can chain multiple Bezier curves together to create complex shapes, and like any typeface you ever use at the moment is built on Bezier curves. And to keep them smooth, all we need to do is make sure that if we want to join a second curve to this one, we create a second control point that's in line with that. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. And that will make sure that when we create the curve, it moves smoothly through that point to the end. And I can move that any way I want, and we still have a nice smooth curve. And then we can build more complex shapes with that. The other important thing you can do with Bezier curves is create a circle, which is a common shape that you need to make often with typefaces or if you're drawing things. So that's all drawn with Bezier. It's not exactly a circle if you're very mathematical about it, but it's pretty close. And then there's this thing, which is another Frenchman developed a method for being able to take a Bezier curve and break it down at any point, subdivide it. And also, well, I'll show you that it's actually two, at the point where we find a point on the curve, we can split that into two different Bezier curves. And that means that if you ever use Illustrator or any of these illustration applications, you can often then add complexity when you need to, if a curve's simple. So there's a letter A, and I don't know if you can see, but that's all based on Bezier curves. This is the first vector software for Mac. It's Freehand 1.0. Quite basic. The thing I really love about this is that color is a drop-down menu in the top of the screen. Like, that seems like an interesting decision. Anyway, so I'll show you some examples. Well, but obviously not if they have a color menu. I mean, I think a lot were black and white, but some were color. But anyway, so let's look at some examples how we can use Bezier curves. So this is really just throwing a bunch of random numbers, and as you saw before, hopefully you picked up on, like, Bezier curves just have this beautiful, smooth, organic shape. And here we're just throwing a bunch of random numbers, different heights, and connecting them all as a Bezier curve. And we can reload this and see different forms appearing. So it's all just dynamically generated with Canvas. We'll speed it up a little bit. And it's quite natural and nice. So you could do that. I guess that's still very literal. It's still a shape. This is, more evidence, I guess, of this kind of spooky natural feel that you get from a Bezier curve, even though it's such a simply defined thing. And using that weird slide that I showed with the line going back and forth and being split into two, we can then find points on the curve. So we can position this boat and look at the angle and do things like that. So, like, it's probably better ways to simulate water than that, but that's very simple and it kind of works. Often Bezier curves are used to create paths of motion. So in film and television, for example, when you're creating animations and moving shapes around the screen. So I'll just, was that a minute? That's everything? All right, we're almost done. So we can create a path, and you can see the ball moves quite smoothly. And then one for John here is CSS3. We can actually we can use Bezier curves to smooth out motion. So this is currently just a linear path. The ball just moves, starts and stops. We can then actually apply this curve here in the CSS to provide ease in and ease out. So you can see that sort of speeds up and slows down. And this is just pure, there's no JavaScript moving that ball, it's just CSS transitions. And then you can, of course, apply that to an image fade or anything else like that. It's not just motion. So, we can move that fade between two images, and CSS is just picking up on that Bezier. So they're kind of everywhere. That's it. Thanks.